Good morning, everybody. This is Dr. Serge, and welcome to another episode of Search for the Truth. And our goal is to really empower and educate people to take in charge of their life, their health. Health is so important, especially this time with everything going on. So I feel that we need to give people information for them to really help the body to fight viruses, bacteria, and all those different things. And today, I'm really excited to have my guest, Miss Diane from Alberta.
Hi.
Thank you for joining me this morning. I know it's a little bit early for you guys over there.
You know what? I'm a morning person. I'm happier to do things in the morning than late afternoon. So this is all good.
I hear you. I'm the same. It's quiet. It's fun to do things in the morning. And today we're going to talk about a holistic perspective of bowel disease. Because gut problem is really common, right? But first of all, I would like for you to talk a bit about yourself, your journey, and why you had this passion to help people with colitis or bowel issues.
Well, I guess most of what I do in any aspect of my life is related to me. So I'm passionate about helping people with digestive health, gut issues, bowel disease, because I've lived it. So when I was 21, I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. And by the time I made it through the medical system and the testing and the waiting, I was so sick that I was in the hospital for a month. I could only be fed through a tube, and they just kind of were watching me because it was pretty much like, I remember the surgeon saying, your insides look like chopped liver and we may have to operate at any point in time, basically to save my life. So I managed to recover through the medical system. I was on really heavy doses of prednisone, which I learned to not love, but it healed me in that time. So I was about, 21, and just found that I was constantly following the doctor's advice. No one would tell me anything about food. They said I would figure it out. But I was on all these drugs, and every time I tried to come off of the medication as they suggested, I would get sick again. And so it was a year and a half. I was on crazy heavy doses of prednisone and just feeling like, how am I supposed to live my life like this? This is not what I desire. So I just started looking. I started reading. I was working in the mountains at that time in a beautiful natural setting. And I think that sort of inspired this, trusting what is there for us in the earth and nature. And I connected with a naturopath that very quickly informed me that I had a host of food sensitivities. And it was almost immediate. It was about 2 weeks after I fully bought in to everything they said, because I was just at my wit's end. It was about 2 weeks, and I was able to start tapering off my medication. And on a side story, I'd always had challenges with my weight. I was a very active young person. I was an athlete, but I was always heavy, and I didn't feel right in my body in that way. And it was, again, another, side benefit of, as soon as these things that were not right for my body were taken out of the equation, I dropped the weight, I got healthier. So it was just kind of a light bulb. And then from that point on, it spurred me to study holistic nutrition. I left my teaching job to further my own knowledge for myself in that, because as I changed, my nutritional requirements changed. And so it's continued to evolve. The mind and the emotions, learning more about stress, how that impacts the body, was also a big thing for me. And so I became a yoga teacher. I've done a lot of work with actually student populations and teaching yoga to them too, in terms of this whole picture, right? It's not just, for me anyway, it has not just been the food. It has not been the rest, the stress. It's been the whole piece. So that's sort of where I come from.
Wow, this is really empowering, actually, and really bring hope to people. I mean, your story has two parts, I guess. The first part, if you went the traditional route, you went to see medical doctors and medication and so on. And unfortunately, that's a pattern that I have seen with people most of the time, is the medical conventional medicine do not seem to address the root cause. I mean, it seemed that you were feeling bad on prednisone, but as soon as you were trying to stop it, the problems were coming back. So
Yeah.
conventional medicine didn't really address the root cause for you.
No, it was like, I call it like a Band-Aid, right? Like I needed that medicine in that moment. I'm very grateful for everything that I was given, but there was more. There was another level that I needed to address for my own healing. And I'll say too that, part of this is if we can address these issues with gut disease, gut health early on, then maybe they don't get as far along as I did. I do believe we have the ability to kind of reset, right? Reset our bodies. And I eventually, after 11 years of trying to figure things out, diet, all the things I mentioned, I did go back to the medical system. I did have surgery. And I actually experienced a holistic practitioner that told me that I should never do that. And that even was challenging for me because I believed that every person is unique, that perhaps this surgery was part of my journey, but I also was doing everything else. And so that's something that I hold really strong to. I would never shame anyone for accessing what they need in the moment, but the belief that there's always more that we can explore, and that allows us to open ourselves on different levels that, if we only take the medical route, we don't get. And even, somebody would say the same thing for the holistic. If we only take this, is there something else we could be learning about ourselves or about the world? And I think all of that has value.
You're right. And health is a journey. There's a time and place for medical doctors. I used to work with them in a hospital setting. They would save life. And sometimes we do need a surgery for the gallbladder or for this or for that. Don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, like you said, I think if you could get people to understand early on what to do to help healing the body, we could help people to get to the point that you ended up being, other people who ended up with cancer or heart attack and so on. I think holistic medicine is about prevention, but there's a time and place for conventional medicine. Sometimes you need a drug, sometimes you need this, you need that. I think the goal, from my point of view, is to really work as a team.
Yes.
I would never say no to medical doctors. Sometimes they do have a good option to save life.
Yeah. And as I said, that the one holistic practitioner I saw that told me that, and that just didn't sit right with me. Yeah. I also had medical doctors that said food had nothing to do with my disease, which I was like, what? Yeah. How can that be? How can that be? That doesn't seem right. So as you said, it's a journey of finding what is right for us.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody's no journey. And that's something I hear all the time from GI doctors. Food has nothing to do with your gut problem, nothing. So take that med and go home, you're fine. But for you said 2 weeks. So in 2 weeks after changing your diet and your lifestyle, you started to see changes and positive improvement.
It was much faster than and it was completely new to me, right? I always thought I had a healthy diet growing up. And in the traditional, like if you look at the Canada Food Guide, that's what we did. But for me as an individual, there were things in there that were not working. And my tapering process off prednisone, because I'd been on it so long, had to be quite slow. Yeah. But even when I had been doing that before the dietary changes, I would notice symptoms coming back very quickly. And so it was, only a couple of weeks that I had to kind of taper down that next dose, and I was okay. Things weren't slipping. So it was just, it just inspired me. I was like, this is amazing. Why was I not told this when I was in the hospital? Yeah. How do we connect these pieces? Because as you said, the idea of having this all work as a team for me is just like, that would be, it would be amazing.
It would be amazing.
Can do so much for people, for the world in terms of health, but that I don't feel that perspective is often embraced.
No. As a matter of fact, I used to work in the top 4 hospital in the States, in Boston. And that one of the reasons that I started my own practice is we would not focus on food and diet. I mean, the only thing we would do over there is make sure you have your calories, You can have your sodas, you can have your cakes, your donut. That's good as long as you eat your calories for cancer patients, for diabetic patients, for all those patients. And then when against by value, it didn't make sense to feed that kind of junk food to those patients. When I knew that they needed fruits, vegetables, good quality meat, and nuts, and so on.
Yeah.
So it's just crazy how it works. So
Mm-hmm.
for you, what kind of diet did you have? What did you have with the food? You said you have food sensitivities. So clearly food has a big role to play in gut issues. So what kind of diet or what do you recommend to your clients to do when it comes to the diet?
So when I started, I was working with my naturopath. She informed me that I was sensitive to wheat and dairy, yeast, spelt, sugar, and corn. So I was 21. It was my first time living on my own. And I basically had to drive straight to the grocery store. And I remember spending hours reading ingredient labels because there was nothing in my house that I could eat because I was eating, a diet high in all those things. But also at that time, there weren't as many options as there are now. So it took, and what ended up happening was basically my all of the processed foods in my house were removed. Simply, right?
Yeah.
So, anytime you're getting something in a package or a bag, there's sugar in there, almost 100% for sure.
Yeah.
There was, dairy and everything. There was wheat remnants and everything. So it was I just really, when you look at it, I was eating a whole food diet. So I lived 11 years before I opted to have surgery, and I continued to modify my diet within that. So there were periods in time where and I actually still eat this way often because it always was just what felt best. Not a lot of grains, some whole grains, but not every day. High vegetable, minimal fruit, couple pieces of fruit a day, and lean protein and healthy fats. And that is what now, like post, I've now been living symptom free with no colon for 11 years, had 2 kids. Like my life has just blossomed since that moment. But that's been the way that I eat most often now. And sugar, I keep to a minimum.
Well, that's amazing what a diet change can do to the body. And I think you said the magic point is whole food diet. Because as you may know, when you start reading and researching diets, it's really confusing. I mean, if you have the spectrum of doctors recommending a vegan diet to fix the inflammation and the other one carnivore, and you have the keto, the paleo. But one thing in common among all those diets is cut out the processed food and eat food. That's really simple, actually. And you can reverse colitis and inflammation with all kind of diet as long as you follow this simple principle.
Mm-hmm. It's again, it's like back to the earth, right? Like what were our ancestors eating?
Yeah.
They were not eating what we eat today.
No. Today we don't have food in our grocery store. We have processed food. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. But when it comes to healing the body, it's not just diet. There's a mind component, there's a spiritual component, there's different beliefs. And one of the things that I see fairly common, that was my issues in my teens. I had major gut problems, and I had what they say IBS. I would have diarrhea all the time, and it was crazy. And then I would have constipation. And then when I changed my diet, everything got back to normal. So I was really surprised by that. But the main thing for me was stress. Stress was the main problem for my gut issues. So how do you connect stress, anxiety, traumas from the past, for example, beliefs to gut issues?
One of the first ways that really helped me to kind of understand how my beliefs manifested into illness was looking at the chakra system.
Yes.
And just the different energy centers in the body and the blocks and the beliefs that we like, the emotional connection to those particular spaces. So I know for me, I had a lot of stress because of what I believed about my appearance and how people would see me and judge me, and the fear of those judgments. Like I said, I struggled with my weight. I came from a really high-performing athletic family, and I was never, like, people talk about traumatic experiences with family and growing up, and I don't believe that I had trauma in terms of like abuse or anything like that. I grew up in a wonderful home, but we take snippets of things. We plant these little seeds in our mind and they grow, and we run those programs over and over and over, and it becomes our normal internal dialogue. So I would see a girl in the change room at school and shame myself because I was bigger than her. And that didn't align with what my family was like. There was all this internal stuff. And it's, it took me a while to figure it out, but it doesn't surprise me that the disease that I manifested, which I believe I did partially, showed up in my gut. Like literally my body was eating itself, eating away, destroying itself, but it was the same thing happening in my mind towards my body. So when I think about stress, I perceive things as stressful based on things that I believe to be true. If I don't have a belief about people judging me being scary, then that's not a stressful thing for me. Mm-hmm. But, I ended up in a teaching career. I was coaching. I was in front of people. I was under constant, you might think of stress as just the pace of the day in a teaching life, which is busy and stressful. But it was more of the undertones, the internal dialogue of where that stress came from. So a huge part of my journey has been self-reflection, journaling, meditation, mindfulness practices, so that I could start to understand what some of these stories were that I had going on my head, and I get to change them. And that's my belief about when we see changes in stress. Because I can leave my teaching career, which I did, but then I was still stressed, right? Because I didn't do any work to get to the root cause, again, the root cause of what that stuff was. And that's, again, something that's different for each of us, because our own story is always unique. But I have found in people with gut issues, typically high performers, we maybe are a little bit more A-type sometimes. Yeah. We are digesting a lot of information mentally and emotionally, and it shows up in our guts.
You have a good point. That was my issue, actually. I was digesting, like you said, all my emotions. I was really reserved. I was really quiet, and I would keep all my emotions in my gut. Yes. And I think that was part of my problem when I look back.
Yeah. Well, we think of, like, even when you feel, a lot of people will say, well, I feel it in my gut, right? That there is emotions that we have, these story, like they create a physical response in the body. Yeah. And I think when we can start to recognize that physical response isn't an annoyance, it's not just something, oh, it's this, and I'll just shove it off. No, like, it's a message. Yeah. It's a message, and we need to slow down enough to recognize that this is our body and mind in connection, telling us something that we could look at and provide service to ourselves and nourishment in many different ways. Just by recognizing that this is us. It's not an annoyance or a hassle. Like, we get to do this for ourselves,
Yeah, that's really powerful. And you're touching a really good point here. I was reading some statistics on gut issues and connection with the mental, the mind, the spiritual. And some doctors said that 70% of gut issues come from the mind. And they call it nocebo effect, right? So meaning that your mind creates the problems in your gut, and they were connecting that with the gut-brain connection, the brain being the gut being the second brain, and so on. So it's really powerful what your mind can do. And I feel that if we can really heal our mind, our brain, we can help everything in the body.
Yeah, 100%. It's like, I find it so fascinating and so encouraging to know that we can change. Right? Like, we can change our brain. If we want to learn something, we can. Yeah. If we want to experience a different reality in terms of how we think and feel, we can. There are, things we have to do or commit to for ourselves to do that, but it is available to us. And I feel like we get caught so often in it's just, the daily grind. We're just in it. We just, we feel okay, oh, it's enough.
Yeah.
What if it was more? Like, we can have more. We can.
There's always more. And it reminds me of a patient that I met a few weeks ago. She was diagnosed with a stage 4 cancer, a few months to live. And she really used a spiritual mind diet approach. And within a few months, all the masses, the cancer disappeared. The mind is powerful, unbelievable. If people would know that, they will use it to help healing the body.
Yeah. Oh, that's so, it gives me shivers when I hear that. Like, it's so inspiring.
And on the other side, like you said, sometimes people have false beliefs or false perspective about themselves, and they can cause problems. So it's really important. That's one of the things I do as well with my clients, not just the diet, but you have to look at your stress, your past, your abuse, the traumas that can be part of your journey as well.
100%. It's, the whole picture, right? We're complicated creatures.
We are, but
awesome. Like, the human body and the mind are amazing.
We don't really know much about what's going on with the body, the mind, but we know that if you can take care of it, the body will heal itself.
Yeah.
Powerful.
Yeah.
Can you give us a story? I would like for you to give us some hope and excitement. One of your clients that came to you, she was really low, really down, not a lot of hope for her or him. And with your tools, your approach, you brought them back to life. Do you have a case like that? With you is pretty fascinating by itself, but do you have any other examples that you can testify about?
So a girl, a lady that I worked with popped up in my mind, and I've changed my, I'll just say that I've changed the way that I work with people over the last little while. Thank you, COVID, because it made me look at what I was doing. Yeah. But I really enjoy spending more time with people. Like, I'm a relationship person, and so that serves me in my business, and I feel like it serves them. Yeah. But to see the evolution of the beliefs start to change and how that impacted how she was taking care of herself, and even the things that she opened herself up to in her life. So I had a lady, dealing with some gut stuff and trying to lose some weight, but it was actually more of the beliefs of like, everything is hard. Yeah. We got to work hard to get what we want. It's always a struggle. People are out to get you. This kind of mentality, and it was showing up in how she took care of her body. Right. And so she was dealing with she was actually going through some tough times, and just in the things that I would see her say and the way that she would comment on something on social media, and even a side venture in a business, that she all of a sudden had this idea and went for it. Like, I don't see that happen when we have a limiting belief about us and our ability and what is available to us. But when that started to change, it was so magical to see her just step into these new levels of herself, and her health journey continues to evolve with that. Right. So I guess that's not as related specifically to the gut stuff, but I think, like we've been talking about, it's all connected. And I know that part of her journey will continue to move along in that direction. I think, and maybe it's selfish of me, but the other thing that pops up for me is that sometimes the decisions that we need to make for ourselves in order to kind of, again, get to that next level of health, they feel really uncomfortable. And so my example is making that decision to have surgery when I finally felt true in my heart and soul that I had tried everything that I could, and believing in myself enough to know that, yes, this was the right decision for me, regardless of what anyone else said. Yeah. 3 months after my surgery, I was pregnant. Completely surprised. We were packing our home so I had surgery in June. We were married in August. And then we were leaving in October to go live in a van in Australia for 3 months and travel. That was our honeymoon. And just, I think one thing that I did was just work on my belief of like, I am healing. I am healing. This is for me. All of this is available for me. And, we had a pretty detailed conversation with the surgeon before taking that step that like, you may never have children naturally after this. It's so invasive. But just again, rooted in finally able to believe in myself, which is all connected into that gut powerhouse, right?
Yeah.
And 3 months later, I was pregnant. Like So I'm, like I said, that one always comes up when people ask about it. And so I'm like, well, I have to share that because I feel like that's pretty big.
That's huge. That's powerful, actually.
Yeah.
What the beliefs and the body can do. You have one side, so you cannot get pregnant, and the other side, you believed in it, and you did. You briefly mentioned at the beginning that you have a passion to work with young adults, and specifically young athletes. Can you tell us a bit more about your work with them? Because one aspect of what I see with them is they don't talk about nutrition, the coaches, the different teams. Nothing about nutrition is all about, working out, increase the performance, but nutrition is the key. Not just that, but the mind is important as well.
Yeah. So again, kind of like I said at the beginning, a lot of what I do stems from me.
Yeah.
So I was a student athlete. I played a year of post-secondary volleyball. And then I went on to my teaching degree and I started coaching. So I've been coaching volleyball for like 21 years, just in the youth sport, which I love. But once I did my certification in holistic nutrition, I started thinking more about, and this, again, the holistic piece, right? The mind, the body, the emotions, the whole thing, and how we were not serving our young athletes well based on the current model of youth sport, which is practice more, train more, starting to get into more like building physical strength, which is good, but there is no foundation for any of that to build upon. So what I started doing within my business also was I did a lot of work in schools, like in phys ed classes, sports performance programs with teams and clinics and camps. And I would go through with the kids what they were eating on a regular day and what they actually required for not only performance, but for normal, healthy growth and development. Because when, kids 11 to 18, they're growing at rapid rates in there, tons of changes happening in their body, and they don't eat enough or enough of the quality of food that they need for that to happen. So, in youth sport, we're seeing more dropout rates. We're seeing more injuries at younger ages, more chronic injuries, illness, mental illness. And in my mind, I'm like, they don't have the foundations in nutrition that they need. This is part of why this is showing up. So that has been a passion of mine. I did some work a few years back with the women's volleyball team at the University of Calgary here. And we did biweekly yoga as recovery, right? Forced recovery, because otherwise they're so busy, they don't do it. Right. And I sat with each athlete and we went through what their actual calorie requirements were to make sure they were getting just enough in terms of fuel, but then also the mind piece, like what thoughts do you have about all this? How are they supporting you? How are they holding you back? What is connecting with what's happening right here to what transpires on the court? Because again, it's all connected. So that's been a long running passion of mine. And I think, having been a teacher, I love working with young people. I do. And I see too, sport as such a plentiful arena, an amazing place for us to instill this information for them that will benefit their health, their performance, their enjoyment of sport, but will ripple into the rest of their life. Right? So I see it as it's a classroom for me, for sure.
That's awesome. And you're right. We need to start training them, teaching them, educate them at an early age. It's much easier to, again, prevention, and teach them the right food to eat and what to do. And as they grow older, they are healthier, they're happier adults, and more just performing better in life. Listen, Diane, time is up. So as a last piece of advice, it goes fast. I would like to help our audience. I mean, when it comes to gut health, they don't have a lot of hope. I mean, typically a little bit like you, they are put on prednisone. It could be all kind of medications, heavy drugs, and they are sent home. But you are living testimony that it's possible to reverse those conditions. So what would be one piece of advice for them who are listening to us today that they need to do in order to start this path of healing?
Simplest things I can think of, it's back to the whole food. So avoid things that are in bags, boxes, and cans.
Yeah.
So that by nature means when you go to the store or the market, you're going to be spending your time on the outside edges of the store, and you're not even going to go down those middle aisles because the marketing is so smart, right? They know how to target us. So we just, we can remove that variable, which I think another one I would say is just reduce. I don't always like to use the word cut out, but that's in there. In reality, sugar.
Yeah.
And again, if you're using whole foods, that will happen on its own. So perhaps that's an easier way to think about that for people that have attachments to sugar, because many of us do.
Yeah.
And then I love this quote that it's actually from another lady that I follow, but she says, if the dream is in you, it's for you. Her name is Amber Lillystrom. And that has really resonated for me, because I think we often have these little thoughts that pop up, which I believe is our intuition of, oh, what if it could look like this? Like, what if I could actually not need this medication anymore? What if I could feel really good every day? Like, those are dreams. That is intuitive inner knowing. If that is in your mind, grab onto it, because it's there for a reason. Again, the messages, and that's where we can start to explore. When we don't look at our desires, when we don't acknowledge that they could be there, what do we have to work forward to? Right? So it's like, what is that little thing? Like, what would you love? What would just fill you up, and move towards that?
Wow, well said. That's really powerful. Small steps, but really powerful to start this journey of healing the body, not just the body, but the mind as well. So how can people reach out to you if they have questions for you or if they want to work with you?
So I'm on Instagram at DJ Wellness. Well, is there a way to like type this stuff in? I haven't done this
You
before.
can send me a text or an email. I'm going to add it to the video.
Okay, cool. So there's that. I'm also on Facebook. You can follow me at Diane Johnson. I'm on there, or I also have a business page, DJ Wellness. And my email is just info@djwellnessconsulting.com. I am always happy to chat with people. So even if people want to just have a conversation or get some ideas, like that's fun for me to do. So reach out for sure.
Awesome. Did you hear that, guys? So reach out to her if you have any questions about how to heal the guts, because she has a powerful testimony about it. So Diane, thank you so much for your time. I will let you go. Thank you again, and have a good rest of the day to you and to everybody else.
Thank you so much. You can have a good day too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.